Now, I believe there's different levels of heaven, like different levels of school, like kindergarten through 12th grade. And maybe you're on a different level. There was a very golden light that I was like headed towards in my mind. But then all of a sudden, I felt a pull all the way to the center in front of me. And the center in front of me is Jesus standing as I saw his picture growing up in the Catholic religion, just like I saw, with long brown hair, gorgeous blue eyes, and he had on the white robe and sandals. And he says,
My guest today is Amy Jamison, who had walking pneumonia and a near death experience at the age of 23. Since then, all of her abilities have woken up and she is able to communicate with spirits on the other side. So, Amy, welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You're
Yes.
welcome. Well, since you had a near death experience at the age of 23, you had not lived a lot of your life, but I'm going to guess it was probably a little bit different than it was after your experience. So, what was your life like before this happened?
Well, before this happened, I was one of 5 kids raised in Galveston, Texas, and I actually was raised very strict Irish Catholic religion. So we went through baptism, confirmation, and all the way up through 10th grade through catechism classes. Now, I always believed in God, Jesus, and the angels. A couple of things I had problems with. One was before my near death experience, I could not understand what was the Holy Ghost. What the heck was that? I always questioned it. I never really quite understood until I went to heaven and back before I figured that part out. And then the other one was I had a hard time believing in hell. We were taught any little sin we did, we would end up in hell. But that's not what Jesus said. Jesus died for everyone, everyone. And he said, if you repent and ask to be saved, I will save you and you will have everlasting life. He didn't say, well, you killed somebody, you stabbed somebody, you did this or that, you're not going to go. So I fully believe that we all go at one point or another. Now, I believe there's different levels of heaven, like different levels of school, like kindergarten through 12th grade. And maybe you're on a different level according to whatever sins you did, and you have to work your way up. It's just the way I believe. But I was always very inquisitive as a child, and I always believed I had a lot of deja vus, like I'd been to a lot of places that I had normally not been to before. But in my mind, I knew where I was, and I didn't understand that. And also, I knew that the father that was with me was not my birth father, and I figured that out over the years as well. But that's how I was raised, and I was the good child, second to the oldest. And in 1976, at that time, I was married and living in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was working as a dental assistant. Unfortunately, I had a very bad cold for about 2 weeks. I thought it was just a cold, but it kept getting worse and worse, and I kept coughing so much around the patients with the mask on, even. And one night, driving home from work, I felt a heaviness in my left side of my left arm. And I stopped and called because we didn't have cell phones back then yet, and told my husband to be on the lookout for me because I wasn't feeling too well. So I got home. He really wasn't paying much attention to what I had said to him, actually. I ended up doing 6 loads of laundry, lived upstairs in a second unit apartment. He helped carry them up and down to the laundromat, cleaned the house, and then cooked dinner and sat down to smoke a cigarette. I smoked at that time. Unfortunately, when I sat down on the couch to smoke the cigarette, all I could do is cough, cough, cough. I had a very difficult time breathing to the point where I put the cigarette out. So I turned to my spouse and I said, please take me to the hospital. I'm having trouble breathing. I can't breathe really good. And his comment was, there's nothing wrong with you. You're a hypochondriac, and no, you're fine. And so I waited a few more minutes and I kept coughing and coughing. And I turned to him again and I said, please call me an ambulance. I'm having trouble breathing. I need to go to the hospital. No, you are a hypochondriac. There is nothing wrong with you. And I went, okay. So I got up and I picked up the phone and I called the local hospital where we lived and asked to speak to the doctor on call in the emergency room. And as I was speaking to this doctor, he said, are you by yourself? And I said, no. He goes, well, who's there with you? I said, my husband. He said, put him on the phone. So my husband went to the phone, his eyes got really big, and he slammed down the receiver and said, "Let's go." I said, "Well, what did that doctor say to you?" He said, "I could tell from talking to you on the phone that you were having difficulty breathing. You were struggling to breathe. And he said that if I did not get you there in time, or if you died on the way, or you died in treatment, I would be held totally responsible." And I said, "Good." Then we got to the hospital, and that was the same doctor who treated me. They did a chest x-ray, and it was decided that I had pleurisy fluid in my lung and walking pneumonia, and my lung had collapsed. I needed to have a chest tube insertion. So they got me prepped and ready in the operating room, and they started with the chest tube insertion. Once they numbed the outer skin and put it through the skin, that was okay. But then they said, we can't numb the pain as it goes through your rib cage. So when they put that in, I blacked out totally. It was as if my eyes are open, but all I see is dark, 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 dark. And I kind of look down, and when I look down at the bottom of my feet, I see, excuse me, a tiny white circle of light. So I start, this is my version of it, where it's like I'm a miniature version of myself inside my own body, going from my head to my feet to go out of my feet. And I'm like spinning in a circle, dark circle. When I get around the heart level, I see a very tall, large, dark figure, like a man, kind of like a mummy wrapped up. And he has his arms out trying to grab me. I don't know what that was, but I believe that I stared around and missed him and went out my feet. When I went out my feet, I'm at the top of the ceiling looking down in the operating room, and I see myself on the table, and I go, "Oh, there I am." And then I look at me and I go, "And here I am." I look the same, only I was a vaporized version of myself when I was out of my body up in the ceiling looking down. I could hear the doctor and two nurses, and the doctor was calling time of death on his watch. And the two nurses were saying, "Oh, it's such a shame. She's so young and so pretty. She's only 23. And my husband was in the corner crying. And he wasn't crying because he was going to miss me. He was crying because he was going to go to jail because he let me die, you know. But for me, once my soul exited my body, there was no physical attachment as far as negativity, hurt, pain, trauma, regret, none of that. It was just total happiness. So I look at everyone with love. And that's what that was total love. And so I was so happy with that. And then I feel like I'm a few feet above the ground next, like I'm standing in the clouds. And I look to my left. And when I look to my left, I see two angels. A little girl angel with long blonde hair. She's probably about 8 years old, and has wings on her back with a white robe. And then on her shoulder, on her right shoulder, is a little baby angel boy with curly reddish blonde hair, laughing and playing and just pulling on her, having a good time. And then I decide to look to my right. And when I look to my right, I see three relatives who were very much deceased from the age of 70 to 90. And when they looked to me like they were in their 50s at the most. So I recognized them. Beyond the three of them, there was a very golden light that I was like headed towards in my mind. But then all of a sudden, I felt a pull all the way to the center in front of me. And in the center in front of me is Jesus standing, as I saw his picture growing up in the Catholic religion, just like I saw, with long brown hair, gorgeous blue eyes, and he had on the white robe and sandals. And he says, his right hand goes up and he goes, "It's too soon. You're not supposed to be here. You have to go back." And he puts his arm down. And when he puts his arm down, I'm back in my body with the sheet over me. The priest is standing on my side, and he's giving me the last rite still. I blow on the sheet, and the priest pulls it down. He sees it. He goes, "Well, my child, it's a miracle. You're back. You've had an experience. Would you tell me about it?" And I go, "Yeah, but I'm angry." And he goes, "Why are you so angry?" I go, "Because I was happy there. I didn't want to come back." He goes, "Well, you weren't meant to go there yet." So shortly after that time, I started noticing that I would get very, I don't know, scary, uptight feelings in my body, like something bad was around me or something negative. And one day, the husband I was married to at that time, we were taking a nap, and he fell asleep, deep sleep, and he woke up, started saying, "Quit pulling on my feet." I go, "I'm not pulling on your feet. You're dreaming." And he kept saying it. And then later that night, I ignored it. Later that night, we went to bed and he started it again in the middle of the night. Quit pulling on my feet. I said, I am not pulling on your feet. Anyway, that went on for a whole 24 hours. And then the next day, he went out on the property where we lived and he was doing landscaping. Well, I was very tired from being kept up. So I took a nap in the middle of the afternoon. All of a sudden, I feel a very large hand, very strong, put one leg over the other on my feet and jerk me from the head of the bed off to the end of the bed onto the floor real fast. And I was so shocked. I jump up, I'm looking all around. I can't see anybody, but I could very much feel the person's hand and what they were doing. So it was kind of scary. Anyway, that night we had another experience. And that night we were laying there going to sleep. And all of a sudden I felt and saw like a dark shadow in front of, over me, kind of like hovering over me. If you've ever seen the movie Ghost with Demi Moore, those black entities that were hovering over people to take them away. Well, that's what this thing looked like and felt like, but I felt it sucking the air right out of me. And my husband was laying beside me and he says, I see something dark above your body. Do you see it? I go, yes. I said, we got to get rid of it. I can't breathe. It's trying to take my spirit. He goes, okay. So we grabbed hands and we yelled and prayed it away to the love and light of Jesus and told it was not ever allowed there again. And it left. But what we did not know at that time was whoever lived in the home at that time, any person who harbored negativity, it would go from the person that was around to the next person. My daughter and granddaughter lived with us at that time. And so, my granddaughter and daughter lived in another house and the spirit went to them. So they told me that they had to do a blessing with the priest and saging, and the spirit actually grabbed my daughter and held her up against the wall in the air against her neck, and she was kicking her feet to get her husband's attention, and he finally got her down from there, and they prayed and made it go away as well. But whenever you have a dark spirit attached to you, you have to have everyone in the environment be with you to sage and bless and clear it away, pray it away to heaven. So that's what happened with that. For about 5 years, it took me 5 years to learn how to get rid of that entity. In the meantime, shortly after that time, after the 5 years, I started seeing and hearing things before they occurred. Meaning, like my sister, I dreamed she had a fire from the Christmas tree and a heating pad in her bedroom on the blanket. And it was very vivid dreams. It was very detailed. So that once I got up in the middle of the night and my feet touched the floor, I still remembered the dream. And it was a nightmare-like dream. It wasn't a good dream. And for a long while, I didn't know, well, what do I do? What am I supposed to do with this information? Why? I don't want to have a nightmare every night and see this every night. And I decided to try something. So I said, okay, I'm going to tell her, whether she believes me or not, what I say. I'm going to tell her what I saw. And in the end, it'll be okay. So I told her what I saw. And of course she says, well, only Jesus knows that. You're crazy. You don't know nothing. That's not going to happen. And then a couple of weeks later, it happened. And she would call me back up and she goes, well, it happened. But you know what? It didn't happen like you said it was going to happen. I go, when it happens for me, it's like a movie trailer where I see the beginning, the middle, and the end, not your whole version of it, but just pieces of it. And I said, in the end, as long as I told you you'd be okay. And as I did that with each and every, what I called nightmare at that time was really a vision. I would tell people what I saw. They would say whatever. They'd call me crazy for years. You don't know what you're talking about. You're nuts. You're dark. You're worshiping the devil, whatever. For many years before that happened to me, I would say the same thing to people who said they were psychic or mediums or whatever. I'd go, you're nuts. Well, after that happened to me, I couldn't say that anymore because I had over 40 years of that occurring where everything I saw happened. And I told the people, I even saw 5 deaths. Unfortunately, I could not prevent the deaths. But I also had the relative spirits coming to my bedside then and giving me messages to tell my children. And that happened on 3 different occasions with one of the relatives and my uncle also. So, it was like very vivid over and over, like a nightmare until you tell them and then it goes away. But it continued It didn't stop. It still comes. I still have them. So I've just learned over the years that pretty much I'm a messenger, and my job is to tell them what I see so they'll be okay in the end. I try to convince them that I'm really saying what I'm saying is the truth. But of course, if that hasn't happened to you, it's very difficult for you to understand or believe that, oh, yeah, right. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But that's my near death experience.
Amy, you have had a very extraordinary experience and experiences after. You mentioned a few things that I've never heard before, and I've studied an awful lot of these and interviewed a lot of people. So I want to go back to the near death experience. Thank you so much for
Sure.
sharing everything. And I want to talk about something that I've never heard anybody say, and that is that you had a mini version of yourself moving through your body. So can you remember where the mini version of yourself started? Was it up here? Was it where was it?
To me, that was me, my brain. What I'm describing as the mini version of me is my soul. But at that time, how I related to it was, oh, I'm leaving my head and going from my head to my feet. And then when I got out, okay, I'm out. I'm still me, but I look the same, except, like a vaporized ghostly version of the looking at my body, it looked the same on the table, just lifeless. So yeah, that's how it felt to me. It felt very strange. And it felt even stranger when I'm like, how could I see a dark spirit inside my own body trying to get me? I never connected that as well. How did that happen? But that's the dark entity that I brought back with me. So I have no idea.
Well, when you say it's the dark entity that you brought back with you, you mean after your near death experience, you brought it back with you?
Yes.
So, do you think that prior to that pneumonia experience, that dark entity was there and you just were not aware of it?
Yes, because I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of trauma and drama and pain and negativity. I was 100% negative and anxietied out with depression because I had an alcoholic abusive stepfather. So I was one of the ones who got it the most. So yes, I believe that that's where that came from. Could have been even attached to him for all I know, because he drank a lot really bad all the time. So.
Yeah, and I've actually heard that I remember hearing a near death experience story where somebody was in a bar and they
Mhm.
were watching people who had consumed alcohol because they had died in that bar and they came out and they were surprised at how many entities were around the people. And it seemed like the more inebriated somebody was, so their mind was shut down and open, the more those entities were kind of messing with them. So that's an interesting thought as
I
well.
fully believe that. And matter of fact, that's one of the examples I give someone when they ask me, well, how do you get a dark entity or a dark spirit attachment? How does that happen? I go, well, all it needs is some negativity and hurt and pain from you to attach to you. The best place, bars, because you're drinking and you're around a lot of negative and painful, hurtful stuff, and you're not in your right frame of mind. So you're not protecting your spirit. So anything's going to attach to it. And then, of course, if you're doing any kind of drugs and you're not in your right state of mind again, and the people you hang around, surprisingly enough, the 3 to 5 people in your immediate circle are the most important people that you should have as positive people. Even if they're
Mhm.
negative, gossiping, hurtful people, you don't want to keep around them because you won't prosper yourself. You won't awaken yourself and you won't get better than you already are.
Yes, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go back to when you have come out of your body,
Okay.
you've seen your body. Was there anything that you witnessed from this 23-year-old perspective out of your body in that room where they were calling your time of death that you were able to later go back and get a confirmation from either from a doctor or nurse or anything in anybody else in that room?
Everything that happened, the time of death calling, the 2 nurses talking, and my husband crying, all of it. I told them what I saw and what they were doing. Yes. They
And did
were,
they
they
believe
were,
you?
well, let's put it like this. I believe that they believed me. Even the doctor was amazed. But when it came time to write the chart up, there was no mention of time of death. You know what I'm saying? There was none of that. It wasn't written down that way. But they did talk to me about it afterwards and said, that is amazing that you can remember that. I go, well, I saw it. I heard it and I saw it, everything.
So you leave that room and then you go into the other side and you describe seeing some relatives. And
Mm-hmm.
you also, before this, you mentioned the reason I'm going to bring this up is just because of some of the comments that I got around the last video. You mentioned that as a Catholic, as a
Right.
very devout Catholic growing up, that you were taught about Jesus and that you had to ask Jesus into your heart. Now I know that that's a biblical John 3:16
Right.
and nobody goes to the Father except for saying that. But it's a very Christian doctrine, and the most people in the world do not believe in that, and most people in the world do not subscribe to that, call Jesus into their heart. And according to a lot of the Christians, then everybody who doesn't do that is going to hell. But you
Right.
also mentioned that you really didn't feel that hell was something in the levels of heavens. We're going to get into that also. But I'm
Okay.
curious, for the relatives that you saw on the other side, the three relatives, based on that doctrine and that belief system, would you have expected to see those three relatives in heaven?
No, and I didn't expect I was going to be there either because I sinned growing up. So if I sinned, I was told I was going to hell, but I never saw hell. My personal belief, after over 40 years of meeting so many different people who have had similar or likely experiences, and others who have had even different experiences, is that I believe wherever your happy place is in your mind, let's say you love to go to the beach. When you get stressed, you'll meditate and you'll go to the beach. Okay. When you pass, that's where you're going to go in your heaven, is to the beach. And that's where he's going to meet you. Now, I also believe that that happens with people who don't believe in God. They're atheist, agnostic. I also believe the person I was married to at that time, he believed in aliens. So he was always telling me that there is no Jesus. I don't believe in the religious version that he's an alien. Well, guess what? He has superpowers. I can't explain those superpowers. When he was speaking to me, I didn't move my lips and he didn't move his. It was like mind to mind, and we knew what we were saying. And so, who's to say? Maybe he is an alien. I don't know. But I do personally believe that all the different religions are there for the reason of reaching everyone in the world, whether they're religious or not, and that this is how they're going to connect in the end. If your happy place is a fishing pond, I believe you're going to go to a fishing pond and be met by your God or non-God or your universe or your alien or whoever you believe in. But I believe we're all totally connected and it's all the same person. He just visualizes a different way.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And thank you for sharing your personal thoughts and beliefs. I know it's a little risky sometimes to do that on YouTube.
That's okay.
But what about the people then that have these thoughts? You said that you believe that whatever thought, whatever happy place or unhappy place that they believed is where they're going to go. Then does that mean that we are all going to the same place? In essence, nobody goes to hell. There is not a hell.
Well, what I believe is I'll say it like this, we're all going to the same building in the sky. And in that building, there are many different levels. The levels, like different grades, like being in school. And if you are a bad, horrible person, you can end up a worm in the earth, come back in total darkness. As a matter of fact, there was a neurologist who never believed in any of it at all, and he's from, I think, Virginia, and he believed that nothing happens. You just nothingness after you die. And he had a car accident and he went to a worm in the earth and he stayed there for a level of time. And then he moved up to a different level in his book. I think it was called Proof of Heaven is his
Okay,
book.
so you're talking about Dr. Eben Alexander.
Yes, Dr. Alexander.
I have not only
Yes.
had him on the show, but I read his book and he was one of the very early. And I want to just clarify because you're really close, but I want to make sure that we're not giving people the wrong idea. He
No,
was an
that's it.
atheist. He was an
Yes.
atheist and he did
Right.
not believe in anything. He thought when you died, that was it. When
Right.
he died, he did not become a worm in the ground, though. He
Right.
became just some form. He didn't know what he was, but he was in
Right.
complete darkness. And the sound that he heard was like an anvil hitting stone or metal over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. And he said that
Mm-hmm.
he felt like that went on for absolutely millennia. He could have been there 5 minutes, but he could have been there 5 million minutes. It just felt like an eternity. And
Right.
then one day he said he had a thought, is that all? Is this all there is? And all of a sudden there was a pinprick of light really far away, and it came towards him, went bigger and bigger and bigger, and opened up, and this heavenly realm opened up. So since you
Mhm.
brought that up, and I know that story and we just shared it with everybody, so do you think if somebody has a negative connotation, whether they were good or bad, whether they think that they deserve to be in a great place or a terrible place, and they would go to that place, do we all have the ability to, like Evan Alexander did, think and wonder, is this all there was? Because technically, he was a complete self proclaimed atheist,
Right.
meaning he had not asked anybody into his heart. Yet, all he had was the thought, is this all there is? And
Mhm.
he was instantly in heaven. So, do you think that people, no matter what their deeds were, good or bad, all have the ability to be in the heavenly realm?
I think so, but I will say I have met one girl in my lifespan who was a member of the Bloods. She couldn't even say it out loud because she just got out of it. She was so frightened and scared. I was at a flea market event with a booth doing my book, and she came over and talked to me. And she goes, "Please come talk to me when this is over because I have something really important to ask you or tell you." She goes, "I want to talk about the dark entity you encountered." And I told her, and then I said, "What is it that you're wanting to know?" And she goes, "Well, I had a bad experience at first." She goes, "Jesus took me on a train going very, very fast. And he picked me up by my feet and he held me down and dipped me into the fiery pits of hell." Now, that's the first I've heard of that because I had never experienced it. Is it true or not? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could believe that, yes, that happened because of what she did. She's killed people. So I don't know. I'm not her, but I did listen to her story and I said, well, I can't say it's not true or it is. And I just hear your story and believe what you're telling me because you are very fearful of it and that changed her for the better. So I believe it did happen. Uh, it never happened to me, but like I said, that doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, many people do many bad things. They could be on different levels, or yeah, they could be in a darkness like Mr. Alexander for a while, and not know where they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have this encounter with Jesus, but you also mentioned in the very beginning when you started talking that one of the things that you never understood before was about the Holy Spirit.
Right. The
Did
Holy
that
Ghost.
understanding come when you were having your NDE or later?
It came when my spirit left my body and I looked down and I saw myself in a ghostly version. And then I saw myself on the table too. Then I go, oh, okay. That's what they mean when they say Holy Ghost. That's your spirit. But I didn't know that for many years. I even asked all the nuns and they didn't really explain it properly. That was all their Christian lingo that some of it you can't even understand. It's like, okay, I guess I'll believe you. I don't know.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so you go back in. Was there anything else that you wanted us to know about your encounter with Jesus on the other side? It's not everybody that I talk to with a near-death experience who has that experience.
I believe that, like I said, you're going to go to your happy place, wherever that is for you in your mind. And that happy place is where you're going to connect with your belief or the universe or the spirit or the person in charge, the creator, and that you will go from there. And it's all meant to be different because if it was all the same, number one, we would say it's too all the same. Nobody does that. We don't, it can't be true. We don't know. Everybody's skeptical even when you do say things that happen like that because it hasn't happened to them. And when I talk to people, they'll say, well, what's your book about? And I go, well, I'll be happy to tell you, but you may or may not believe, and it's okay if you don't. I'm not going to force it on you. But it's when I died and came back, I was dead 3 minutes, but for me, it felt like eternity, like you were saying. No time watch there, it just happens. I did have another experience on Earth after that was even more remarkable to me.
Oh, I definitely want to hear about that. That's a great lead in.
Yeah, I call it the visiting minister. The visiting
Okay.
minister. So I was married at this time to a different person, and we were partying, we were smoking pot, we were drinking, we were up till 2 o'clock in the morning doing things we shouldn't be doing. And then we went to sleep. Okay. Probably 3 or 4 hours later, I heard a very loud voice, very loud, and it said, "Get up get dressed, and go to this church that I would pass by every day on my way to work. And it shoved me right out of the bed on the floor like a big hand. And I looked, my husband, sound asleep. It wasn't him. He wasn't talking nothing. So I felt like, okay, someone's telling me I got to go to this church. I don't know why. So go to the 8 o'clock service. And I went. It was one of those hands-on song and praise, raise your hands, with the screens up front in front of the church and everybody standing up and singing and doing all this. And that was new for me. I'd never done that before. I went in and I sat there. And at first I felt very uncomfortable. And then I started singing some of the songs with them, which I knew. And then I felt more comfortable. Then I sat down. It was time for the preacher to come out and do a sermon. So he came out and he says, okay, today I would normally give the sermon, but we have a visiting minister here, and he has a very important message for someone that's here in the church today. When he said that, since I'd never been to this church before, never planned on going, and that person told me to get up and go, I felt like I was going to hear something. But you're still skeptical. So the minister comes up, he goes, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm from Dallas, Texas. And I have to say, I'm looking around the room here. And as I look around the room, I see someone I'm supposed to give a message to that Jesus told me to tell something. He goes, I'm going to point you out, and I would like for you to come up to the front. So he goes, you, the blonde lady in the blue flower dress. Well, then, of course, I'm going, and I'm looking all around. I had on a blue flower dress, but I'm like, oh, he's not talking to me. And then I go, me? He goes, yes, you, come up. So I went up to the front of the church, and he said, do you know who I am? I said, I've never seen you before in my life. I've never been to this church before in my life. I just had a message. I had to come here today. He goes, well, on the airplane right here, Jesus showed me your face in the window. And he said to give you this message. Can I give you the message? And I said, sure. He said, the kidnapping of your kids twice and all the bad stuff that's happened to you in the last 6 years has been the work of the devil. Please do not give up on your faith and believe in Jesus, which I did. And I was like, wow, how could this guy know that about me? My kids were kidnapped twice. So it's like, okay, that was amazing, because then I'm like, oh my God, this happened here on earth. And I got a message here. I thought it was really special when I went to heaven, but to me, in a way, that was almost more special, because how often does that happen? I didn't know anyone there, and he didn't know me. So people in the congregation were coming up afterwards saying, you should feel really blessed. And I go, I am. So yeah, that's the visiting minister story.
That's pretty spectacular with all the confirmations that you got.
Yes.
All right, I want to come back to the dark entity.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you believe, based on your experiences, that when you have a dark entity or think that there's a dark entity, that you have to gather everybody around
Mm-hmm.
and you need to sage.
Mm-hmm.
Was it pray as the second one?
Sage and bless it away with holy water. You can bless it away in sage, and then pray it to the love and light of Jesus. And you can literally scream it out of your house. Get out. You're not allowed. Only Jesus is worshipped here, and you need to leave. And as long as you're all on the same level doing the same thing, and you stay in that frame of mind, no problem. But now if you start going back into the bars again or doing drugs or drinking, you're going to get another attachment of some kind, somehow, somewhere. And you may have to do it more than one time in your life. I tell people that a lot too. Like people who are empathic sensitives, what I call an empathic sensitive. They're sensitive not only to chemicals and soaps and different things like that, but they're sensitive to everyone's spirit. They're kind of like all up in the air in their mind, and they're not grounded. So when they're not grounded, they can go into a room of somewhere with a bunch of people and just get, I feel discombobulated. I don't know what to do. I can't handle this energy. And they have to ground themselves. And I'll tell them, before you leave your car, imagine a white light surrounding you and it's protecting you, and carry a tiger's eye stone in your purse or your hand to keep you grounded onto where you are and not pick up everyone else's energies. Because if you start with associating with the negative and the negative and the gossip, pretty soon you're going to be just like it. You're not going to prosper and better yourself in any way, because you're going to be stuck in that realm.
So I think the question I have is, where does free will come into all of this? Because from my understanding and my personal experiences, once I ask for a white light of protection,
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that given any of my free will away to any entity to ever come near me or be a part of me. Like, it is something that I have proclaimed a long time ago.
Right.
And I've never experienced anything other than that. So, how does free will, because we've been given that, and it's my understanding, I get it, people on earth violate our free will all the time. But
Right.
I do not believe personally that spirits are allowed to violate your free will.
I believe that they can through your mind, like mind work, like they're working on your evil thoughts, your negative thoughts, your hurt, your pain, like, being raped over the years and then having to deal with that and live with that. And you see the person around sometimes, maybe they're not in jail or whatever, and it brings it back. And you're constantly living in that mode and thinking of it. You're in dark, deep, depressive mode. That's how a negative entity attaches. But you can get rid of it. You just have to get rid of it, like I was saying, and pray it away and yell it away and sage and bless. And try not to hang out in those environments or with those kind of people. That's the hard part, because some of them
Yeah,
you love.
I think from my experiences on the other side, it's even more simple than that. I don't think we have to do all the rituals. I think it's enough that you call in the light and you
Right,
say that there's nothing allowed. That's I don't
right,
think you have to carry a stone, or you have to have other
right,
people or sage or anything. Those things are great because I think ceremonially maybe they bring something to the process that
right.
somebody can hang on to that is more tangible.
Well,
But I feel
that's
like
kind of what I mean when I say that. So the
okay.
people I'm referring to that are in that frame of mind, they've been abused for years.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying for
They've
sure.
been hurt. They don't know how to change their mindset to get to a better level of thinking and a different way to do it. So those are the ones that'll say, okay, do the white light, do the stone in your hand, and do this before and after you come in and out of your car and where you go into these places. And try not to hang with anybody that has those things going on in their life, like the drugs and the liquor and all that.
Right, I can understand because I think I'm trying to be careful here because
Right,
my channel's really about empowerment. It is.
right.
It's about
Mhm.
uncovering the power of our souls. The biggest thing that I was shown on the other side is that the power I became my higher self and my soul. And the
Mhm.
power that we are is just beyond, almost beyond your human conception, or the ability for you to conceive a power like that in your human body it's really hard.
Yes.
So knowing that we're very powerful, I also do not want to spread fear or anything. But what I do like about what you said, Amy, is that for people who are listening,
Mhm.
if they are in a place, I would call it, where they're not able to keep their vibration higher because
Exactly.
of things that have happened to them during this
Mhm.
incarnation, thoughts that they have that just perpetuate, they definitely need to be able to remember and connect to the power of themselves. And I think it's great ritualistically to
Yes.
do these different things that you talked about. So I think that that's really, really helpful because
Right.
we all are in a good place. But I also want to caveat the drinking and the alcohol, because I think that if you are already in a good place spiritually and your vibration is high and your thoughts are relatively good, I
Mhm.
mean, we all get mad at somebody when we're driving and say things
Right.
maybe we shouldn't. But for the most part, if you're good, I think it's okay to be
Oh, well,
able to
yeah, I
drink
think that
alcohol.
too. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm just talking the abusive side of it all. That's the hard.
Yes. Okay. So this is good. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I don't want somebody to come walk away and think, well, great. I guess I'm never having a glass of wine again. Like,
Right.
I
I'm
don't think
never
it
gonna
works like
drink.
that.
I'm never gonna smoke. I'm never gonna, yeah. Yes,
And
go
I'm
do
also
it.
going to speak to, I know that this is considered a drug when we're talking about like these medicine journeys that people do. So mushroom journeys, DMT journeys, ayahuasca journeys, those things. I think it's really important to protect yourself when you're going to go into those states. That's why personally I make sure that I have a shaman and I'm
Right.
not doing them for recreation or fun. But I want to put that out there also
Okay.
because I
Yes.
think that it's important for people to understand it's not bad. We're not
Right.
saying it's bad to do these things, but you do need to protect yourself.
Right. Exactly. Just protect your own personal space. Yes.
So you opened up after this near-death experience, and you also began getting all of these messages for a very long time from your passed away loved ones. And
Right.
now I feel like this is something that you are doing and sharing with the world, these gifts. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how people can connect with you and some of the gifts that you have that you share with the world?
Okay. Well, one of the big things is I like to say what happened to me that took me to a college where I went. I didn't go to college after high school. I went to graduate school on a wife's program before I went overseas with my spouse. But after my near death experience, one night I went to sleep and it was like a group of elder people in heaven who were, they said they were guards over the Akashic records in heaven about everybody that had a file there. And that I was going to write a book, get up and write a book the next day. I was going to write it in 6 months and publish it in 3. I did everything they said. They said, here's how you do it. You love to write, sit down, set a timer for 5 minutes, write anything you want. And now set a timer for 10 minutes, write anything you want. Now set it for 30. Well, after the second time, I didn't have to set it anymore. I just kept writing. And I was told, you have all of the information in your notebooks. I had written everything that ever happened to me and what I saw for over 40 years. It wasn't organized, but I had it for over 40 years. So I took it and did it like an English project, chapter 1 through 20, whatever, and all the different titles and all the different, correspondence that I did with that, and put it in a book and called it Visions from Above, My Journey, My Destiny. When I published it with Hay House subsidiary called Balboa Press, they told me, you're the one that markets it. Well, I was a little shy still, and I went, oh no, I got to market the book. So one day I went on the website and I was looking for different places for flea markets to have a booth and a book. And I came across this ad on every page I went on. It said Sweehaw. I'm like, what the heck is Sweehaw? And I didn't know. And then finally, after about the 10th time I saw it, I'm like, okay, I'm getting aggravated with this. So I shut down the computer and I sat down to watch TV. Wouldn't you know, the first commercial that came on was Sweehaw on the TV. And I go, I get it. I'll call them. I called them. They were Southwest Institute of Healing Arts College in Tempe, Arizona. I lived in Phoenix, Arizona. So I went and I said, what is life coaching program? They were telling me what they offered. And I took life coaching, which helped me learn to release my hurt, pain, trauma, and drama, and everybody else's. When I release mine, I get the same people as a client and help them. So I went from life coaching to hypnotherapy to even became a minister. So I'm a hypnotherapist, a master life coach, a non-denominational ordained minister, a published author about my book, a nanny, and a care provider for the elderly. Those are the things that I do
And a
now.
partridge in a pear tree. You forgot that one.
Yes, I know. But that took me to that college, and it took me to the 4-year program, which I did in 3.5 years, and became a wellness practitioner, is what it was called, for all the things that I do. So I offer intuitive card readings for clients for $10, and I offer hypnotherapy for clients. It takes about an hour and a half per session for $50. And I do those through my email address, which is lowercase letters LEECHERIE66 and ask you to text my phone number at 602-727-9797. And I offer these services to the people when they mention your program. And I've been doing this every time I do a podcast. The book is Visions from Above, My Journey, My Destiny by Amy Jamison. And you can find it on Barnes & Noble. And also you can find it on Amazon.com. And it's very easy read. It tells about 40 years of experiences that I had with the different relative souls who would come and give me messages and what I was told. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good, easy read.
Well, I love that, but not very many people do the card reading. So I'm just curious for if somebody were to call you and say, "Hey, I want the card reading for only $10," which sounds like a bargain to me.
Okay.
How do you do it? What is your process?
Okay. Well, when I went to heaven, I realized soon after when I came back that I have a connection with vibrational feelings, high vibrations on my hands. So let's say I'll say, okay, you want help with a question or concern from the angels. So what you need to do is hold the thought in your mind or your gut, your intuitive or your brain, and don't tell me what it is. I'm not going to know the question. And then when you say you're ready and you're thinking about it, I'll draw the cards. I touch certain cards. I feel those high vibration. That's your card. Usually I'll get 3 cards for one question, 5 or more for 2. And let's say you couldn't decide on one. And when I turn them over, I give you the insight, what I feel goes with that card, along with the reading of the card. Again, I don't know the question. So in the end, I say, if you want to say what the question was, you can, but you don't have to.
That sounds like, bro, that sounds fun. I want to do that.
Okay. We could do that. Yes.
I love it. Well, Amy, it has been a real pleasure talking to you. You have
Okay.
such a fascinating story and you
Thank
tell
you.
it so articulately. So, thank you so much. I know it takes a lot to be vulnerable and to come on and share these things because not everybody is ready to hear about near death
Right.
experiences. But I want to thank you for your part in what you're doing through your
Thank you.
kindnesses to help raise the collective consciousness. It's so greatly
Well,
needed.
thank you very much. One thing I like to leave the clients with, okay, from your program. So, what's the best thing I could tell you from this experience for me? And it's simply this: if you have an argument with a relative or friend and you say some very hateful, hurtful things, and then they pass before you get to say, I'm sorry or apologize, once the soul leaves the body, there is none of that that goes with them. It's nothing but love, kindness, and happiness. So they're not going to remember any of that. They're going to have nothing but love for you. Unfortunately, the ones left behind are the ones that suffer with that. But just,
Mm.
yeah.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because I'm going to ask you one last question before we go.
Sure.
You mentioned that when you were on the other side, that one of the things that you knew when you came back and you started getting all these gifts is that you were given visions of people who were going to pass away.
Right.
And you said this sentence, I was not able to prevent those deaths.
That's
And the reason I want to bring this up is that when I've read books that mediums talk about and they give messages to people who have crossed over and on the other side, one of the things that they say all the time was, no matter what you did, you could not have prevented my death. And now you're saying this again. And the reason I think that this is so important and a great message for everybody to hear is because a lot of times when somebody dies, especially if you were the last person to see them, especially if you knew that there was some kind of an illness, we as the person who have to go on after their passing often go in our mind and think about every scenario of, well, I should have done this. I could
right.
have done that. I didn't do this. Why didn't I think about doing that? Like that didn't even cross my mind when it happened. And they beat themselves up. But I think through my studies and experiences that one of the messages that comes out so loud and clear is that nobody dies before their time. So I love that you said that, but will you elaborate on your thoughts about that a little bit?
Okay, sure. Yes, I felt like there was nothing I could do to change it, no matter, because it was shown to me so vividly. And one of them was the fiance of my daughter for 8 years, who died in a very fiery car crash. I saw it so vivid, but somehow something, just a feeling told me, you can't change it, you can't change it. And it happened as I saw it. So I couldn't change it. It's just something I knew I couldn't do, but I couldn't tell her either because she would have been in there with him. So I couldn't say that either. Yeah.
Well, I think that that's very comforting for the people
Mhm.
that are watching to know that there wasn't anything that they should have or could have
Right.
done.
They didn't do anything
It's
different.
just
No.
somebody's exit point.
Right. It was their time to go.
It
Yeah.
was their time to go. All right,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do the ending how I normally do it. I'll edit some of this stuff out.
Sorry.
No, that's okay because this is easier for me to do it this way.
Okay.
Amy, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I am so thankful for everything that you've shared with everybody, the gold nuggets that you've given people on how to work on anything that they feel like they're fearful for, or if they've got something that is attaching to them. I think those messages are really helpful. And I also want to recognize that it's very difficult to come in and be vulnerable and share these experiences because I know not everybody is ready to hear about near death experiences. So I just want to thank you so much for what you are doing to help raise the collective consciousness.
I
So
love doing it. I love helping people, and I love it when I can help them change for the better like that, because it helps them too.
that's beautiful. And I think we should all aspire to that. So thank you. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
everybody, for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.